Our next speaker is Patrick Keane, founder of Enter Projects. In his presentation called The Age of 3D, Patrick will showcase Project Rattan and the use of 3D printed or prefabricated materials and how architectural research and development implements sustainable, technologically aided and data-driven designs.
Hi, my name is Patrick Keane, founder of Enter Projects Asia. We are based in Thailand and we work all over Southeast Asia and now Europe and the USA. Well, I'd like to thank all of the viewers of the PropertyGuru Asia Real Estate Summit. We really appreciate you attending this year. 3D printed or prefabricated materials will revolutionize the design and the construction industry, and how architectural firms R&D to implement sustainable technology-aided and data-driven designs, especially in the APAC markets. Also considering of the topography, climate, and natural disasters. So 3D printing it's huge. It's with us, and it will completely transform everything in regards to sustainability. Sustainability is a topic we could have a whole conference to talk about just that. So I'll try and address it a little bit in relation to working with emerging and new technologies. So firstly, 3D printing is something that's come to the fore in the last decade in architectural offices for printing models, for presentations, for studies and for tests on designs. But now 3D printing is actually becoming a life-size print that a machine can print in the site itself using concrete, sand, clay, or composite materials. It can occur over hard-to-access sites where templates can be laid out and this can be utilized. So I think it's really important for designers to embrace these new technologies. If one works with 3D printing, it can become incredibly sustainable. For example, we're looking at an idea now where we're actually taking the clay from the site itself and printing some of the building modules out of it and then fitting out the interiors. So the interiors also can be hugely benefited by latest technologies. We work with a lot of prefabricated elements in our buildings, so file-to-factory systems, which we'll talk about later. But sustainability now is the key. And in these two processes I've just talked about, the wastage on the construction site is reduced to virtually nothing. The carbon footprint can be reduced to virtually nothing. All you need is the equipment and the design sensibility and really the need and the want to look into these new technologies and ways of design. Our team can also deploy engineering. We can test these structures even prior to them being built, so we can optimize, we can streamline wall thicknesses, we can streamline roofing to really be something that is not over-engineered or over-designed. It can be something that's fit for purpose in a site. In consideration of the topography and the climate, these buildings are sensitive and unique to their climates, rather than the importation of buildings and designs that come from climates that are not necessarily suited to this area. These projects can now service fit for purpose in Southeast Asia in terms of natural disasters and seismic, earthquakes, rainfall, those sorts of things, flooding. These projects can also be optimized using 3D technology, prototyping, and these new emerging ways of building. So in a nutshell, in the next decade, designers really should embrace these new products and these new technologies because it will revolutionize the construction industry. It will streamline cost. It will streamline time. The results will be more applicable to the site. And last but not least, a much better product for the end user. We started working with the file-to-factory processes quite a long time ago, about 15 years ago. But now it's actually at the core of our business. So in the last, I would say, 4 years, we've actually developed a whole system where we do very little construction drawings or documents. The way we design is actually we come up with a 3D model and we send parts or elements of the 3D model to the factory to get assembled and fabricated. So we'll start with a mock-up or a piece of a building, and instead of documenting it in traditional methods of construction, set of drawings, drafting, handing it to a building team to tender and price, we'll send elements of the building straight to certain designated factories right here in Thailand. So what happens there is that a lot of the design actually gets factored in from a cost point in very early stages. So we can optimize the whole process a lot more efficiently for the clients. That allows a lot more design flexibility. That allows a lot more possibilities. So we have a lot more of a can-do strategy rather than a can't-do strategy or too expensive strategy, or it's a not possible strategy, or it's not feasible this time strategy. So instead of it just being a process that is about visual thinking, it's actually a process that gets taken through all the way to construction. So we'll do a design, we'll work on the aesthetics, we'll work on the environmental, we'll go back and forth with our consultants and teams and with the client, and then we'll actually get it fabricated off-site in elements and then assembled on site. Some of the basic trades still do exist on the site. However, with fabrication processes straight out of 3D, with 3D printing, we're looking to optimize as much as we can site time, as reducing site time as much as possible. The main reason for that is cost. So that budget that we can optimize can go back into the product itself. So rather than paying for long lead times or for labor rates over long specifics of time on a job site, we can actually take that funding and put it back into the thing itself, which is ultimately an innovative design. Data is the backbone of our process. It's not just important, it's everything. Very early on in the design sessions that we have, when we get commissioned for a new project, we'll start to examine natural phenomena, aspects like smoke or steam or clouds, how that geometry works, or something that's specific to the site, if it's the terrain, if it's the seasons. This is about the experimentation, about something that starts a creative process, about fusing different sources, different methods of inspiration that is just instead of the traditional methods of inspiration. So we sketch a lot, but in 3 dimensions, in the digital. So data, all of that data is kept by us, even in its raw form. That's the design aspect. That's the creative aspect. More importantly, also, well, just as importantly, the fundamental site parameters. So the size of the site, but also aspects like the sun orientation, where the sun rises, where the sun sets. They're building blocks for our projects. So because we can calculate that digitally, we can start to work with building forms that respond directly to those aspects. So whether it's wind direction, sun direction as mentioned, time of day, we'll start to interpret all of that material in a very, very early basic massing model. So that's the creative side, and that's the scientific side put together. Furthermore, data is the backbone for actually how we implement our designs. So if we've got a 3D model of some very creative aspects, and we've got physical models of the direction of the massing studies of how sun angles, aspects, wind and thermal can get combined, then we start to work with a project that is climate responsive. And that's how we introduce in very, very early steps sustainability. So what you'll get from this process is at least the parameters from which within to work. My favorite projects have always been projects that have actually quite strict parameters. I know designers need to have parameters to work with, namely budgets, namely time, namely heights and widths and things like that, dimensions of sites. So these are also our parameters to work within. And that's when the creative process can really happen and dovetail with the science or the scientific process. So architecture and interior design really is a combination of art and science. And that's why data is, again, the backbone of our operations at Enter Projects Asia. Furthermore, we work with structural engineers that take this data of ours from very early on and start to analyze how to optimize buildings, how to make buildings that are efficient. So we can work with footings and foundations that are necessary. They're not over-engineered. They're not costing more than they should. What we do is we work with the budgets that you can actually see, because with a lot of buildings, if the data is incorrect, projects will cost money on things that you can't see, like floor slabs and footings and things that are meant to hold up the building. If we can get all that material right and that data, then we can spend it actually on the experience of the project, on the spaces, on the features. We can start to introduce things that maybe previously were not thought could be affordable. Higher ceiling heights, taller buildings, more elegant materials, those sorts of things. Also, data is very important to us, and digital data in terms of installing a project. So if we've got accurate 3D models, working with a file-to-factory process, then we can actually take that 3D and road test it in the factory before it comes to the site. So those elements will be a lot more accurate. That'll alleviate site time and, most importantly, cost. Cost for having to do things again. Cost for mistakes, cost for oversights, cost for estimating on what could happen, rather than actually having it happen. So designers are now able to have a lot more creative freedom with working with a lot more geometry, with a lot more ability to introduce designs that might have been shelved in the past. So yes, data is the backbone of our office, and with a lot of emerging designers out there, here and overseas. When we were voted Most Sustainable Practice 2021 in Thailand, it's most likely because our process is sustainable in design, in the very early steps of the process, even before we talk about sustainable materials, sustainable fabrication, sustainable implementation, actually sustainable design. So take, for example, we have a site which is very hilly, and it's a terrain-based project. So instead of digging and backfilling the site with concrete and piers and pylons, this project is what we would consider a low-invasive project. So the project, even before it's been designed, has a sustainable agenda. Sustainability is a very vertical process. It can't be added to the end of a project. It needs to start from the very, very beginning, from the very, very inception of an idea, and taken all the way to the delivery of a project. So take, for example, a site that has a very hilly place like what we've discussed. If you can imagine that there's virtually no impact on the site, you also save a lot of trees. You save a lot of the ecology of the site, even before you've started building. The problem is taking typical building methods and implementing them on difficult sites. So if one was to put a series of boxes on a site like that, it becomes incredibly difficult to maintain sustainability. So the actual agenda of the project has to start, the geometry of the project, the form of the project has to start in a sustainable manner. And that's by getting to know the site intimately. So because we work with the latest 3D technologies and digital methods, we're able to analyze the site very specifically. We're able to understand the terrain, understand where all the rocks are, the features of the site. So we don't want to spoil any of that. We want to make a low invasive project, and therefore That's sustainability element number one. Sustainability element number two is actually looking at nature. For another project, we're looking at coral structures, how to build using dynamics of coral structures. So that might seem quite far-fetched. However, with these initiatives to do coral regrowth and coral regeneration, that technology is there to actually 3D print coral and replace coral that's been lost. So what we're doing with our project is we're actually assembling elements of the structure to behave like coral. So in that sense, that's also a very sustainable agenda. So we're very vertical with our sustainable approach. We start from the very beginning and we maintain sustainability to the delivery to the very end. Sustainable is a word that people are paying a lot of lip service to. It's a badge that people are using, which is fantastic. But true sustainability has to start with the very, very core of the project, with its very inception, with the very beginning. The building form has to be appropriate to the site. The materials have to be appropriate, and those sorts of things. And that's really what we're getting at Enter Projects, with blending technology and local arts, local crafts, local fabrication, and blending the two. So that's a little bit on us about sustainability, but sustainability is also very personal. Sustainability is different to other people. Sustainability can mean adaptive reuse. It can mean restoring old buildings. And so there's many threads of it. What can be quite confusing is using the word to badge it. So we're sustainable because we're saving water. We're sustainable because we haven't used straws. That's all fantastic. That's a step in the right direction. However, if you have a project that conserves, saves, and maintains the water and has a well system into the geometry of the building, which is what we're doing with this particular terrain project, that is overtly sustainable. So there's a few words from me. Well, this is Spice and Barley behind us, and it's a very unique location in the sense that it's flanked on a 9-meter high space by two very, very large columns. Inside the columns, all of the air conditioning, the ductwork, the beer lines, the pipes, the electrical are all concealed. So all of the functionings, the back of house is all in these columns. And we look to doing a very, very sustainable solution, namely working with the Rattan weavers of Thailand. So out of this experience, it was really wonderful to bring their culture here to an overtly contemporary design and embrace their 5-7 generations of Thai weaving. It's also empowering them because they can bring this culture and this arts and crafts into a overtly commercial setting. So a lot of these people would weave in factories, make small baskets, make small products. Here, this is a very commercial project that has actually had a lot of international acclaim for its sustainability. Rattan is a very, very sustainable project, and we'll talk about that in the next point. But yes, Spice and Barley has a little bit of a destination reputation now. And the other thoughts and ideas that we had very, very early on was to make it glow at night, that a little bit reminiscent of a Thai temple, but something that's a modern form. The forms themselves are a little bit cloudy or a little bit ethereal, and they really resonate with an idea of a craft beer froth or some suds of beer. So they're all references to this project because this project has a unique craft beer offering mixed with Sichuan cooking. And the site here has a long Chinese history, so the dining pairs with that idea. And then outside here at the terrace, it really is a wonderful experience out here. There's a fantastic view of the waterside of Bangkok, and these columns in the evening really start to glow. And it's a very, very beautiful experience in this neighborhood. The columns and the design that we did in this space is easily seen also from the street. It's easily seen from even the icon Siam, and also backwards behind us over the bridge. So the purpose was to make this space a very visible beacon and to create atmosphere from that, to make it something that is a real destination lunchtime, but also dining spot. So you see these columns, and they're further in terms of just having an image of the inside. They resonate outside with the neighborhood. Manufacturing the columns was all done off-site. It was not so easy to install them because on this balcony you see here, we had to bring all of the components and assemble them. So there are a series of templated frames in aluminium, almost like the space frame of an aeroplane, and assembled together. So there was a lot of technology that went into that whole installation process, fabrication process, aside from the design. I think the outcome for us was really the success and the scale of the project. You can see it's huge. The internal scale is 3 floors. And outside here, this is a very dynamic space, a very usable space as well, with the geometry and the planting. And there was nothing here previously when we took a look at the space. It was just a handrail looking directly on the street. So it's got a little bit of intimacy here, with the secluded walls, the atmosphere inside, and then also obviously the Bangkok skyline, which is a main feature and constantly growing. So in Bangkok, when you've got a lot of buildings, you've got a lot of high rises, I think one needs to make something special like this to make it really stand out in the skyline, to be a point of difference, to be unique. So the cloudy or the beer froth style design is also a little bit of a beacon to what they're selling, what they're doing, what's happening in the space. It's an entertainment space, and those references were all introduced into the process and then manufactured and made and delivered by us at Enter Projects Asia. Project Rattan was born in the recent lockdown that we had. That's lockdown number 1, to keep and foster a team that were built up from several projects using rattan. So in this particular example, we've used a lot of rattan, and we decided to come up with an initiative called Project Rattan. Typically, many of the people that work on these kinds of projects stem from 5 generations of experience, and they come from all over Thailand. Now we have a purpose-built factory where they can come and live and work on 1 project or 2 projects, and then leave, go back to their families, live with their families, and bring them all along. So what's exciting for us is these people generally make baskets and sell them in the marketplace. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. Now we're introducing their work into a overtly commercial setting. We're introducing their work to a global audience. We've just done a shipment to Belgium with several containers loads of rattan designs, interiors that really evoke modern design, but also what we refer to as the real people of Thailand, the people that have formed the arts and crafts, the fantastic history that this country has to offer. So we've put our twist on it, and we've made it overtly modern, overtly contemporary design with a lot of geometry, a lot of form, which they are absolutely fantastic at producing. Secondly, Project Rattan is important, I think, because of its sustainable initiative. Rattan is a very fast-growing reed. It's one of the most sustainable materials on the planet. So they're the sorts of things that we should be looking at as a whole, as designers, and then in the marketplace and marketing those things. There's one main threat that these artisans have, and that is the importation of inferior plastic products that one sees in the marketplace. These products, one might think, are a little bit cheaper. However, in the long run, they cost the planet in catastrophic levels. So if you imagine a whole area display, a theatre, an auditorium, a series of swimming pool decks, cabanas, and a very large-scale hotel, all made in synthetic rattan, that's literally acres and acres of plastic being produced. So we just want to stop that from happening. We want to restore, we want to maintain the arts and crafts of Thailand, and we want to do this as sustainably as possible. So it was an initiative coming together of different skills, of different arts and crafts, the design team who are very excited. And it's really a little bit of a reset for us post-COVID design to think about these things, to really think about going local, to use what's on your doorstep, because there's some fantastic opportunities in Southeast Asia for that. Like Jim Thompson rekindled the silk industry, I guess we're trying to rekindle the rattan industry, or at least the arts and crafts industry, in our way of making it overtly contemporary, overtly modern. It resonates well with people. And now we have inquiries globally from the UK, USA, Belgium, and other places as well. So it's stemming past the borders of where these people are from their villages all over Thailand, to a little bit of a global revolution that we're very, very proud and very, very happy to be part of. I think for the future, the more we can exploit these ideas, the more we can talk to people about them, the more we can provide these initiatives, I think the planet will be left in a much better place than in which we inherited it. So I'm really here to talk about technology and sustainability dovetail together. There is a misconception that sometimes technology is not sustainable. It can be overtly sustainable, but the initiative of sustainability has to be a very vertical process. It has to start from the very, very beginning and end at the very, very end. And we're just writing a script for that at Enter Projects Asia. Every project is a different script. We use what we can, and we use the resources. We build up teams specific to projects. We also find that this method, this ideology, is also cost effective. We don't have to import foreign goods necessarily, not that that's a bad thing, but just the reduction of that. And then first and foremost is employing the locals, putting the economy back into the local communities that need it the most. So it's something for everyone to think about. Do you really want to sit on a chair that is made in a sweatshop in less than ideal conditions, or would you like to potentially entertain something that's been made by the arts and crafts, by the people, by hand, where we know them personally? And I think there's steps for working towards in the future. I think in closing, it's important to talk about or reference the innovation in real estate and in building. For us, innovation is all about people. It's about new ways of thinking and coming up with new processes, and that all starts with people. So whether it's the rattan workers combined with our designers, or a new process on a building site using technology, that's innovation for us. It's about the blending of the people and the skills that haven't been blended in the past. So we'll take a age-old material like a brick and utilize this material in a different way with a 3D printed structure, or place it in a certain way that uses robotic arms, things like that. So we want to really touch on history, on materials, on things that are tactile to us as humans, to something that's natural, to something that's local, and fuse it with processes using three-dimensional technology, fabrication, 3D printing. I think that's the innovation for the future. I think technology and sustainability can work hand in hand. And I think that's the most exciting thing for designers, to really explore that. If they don't explore it, I think it's really actually going to turn them into dinosaurs. And relevance is incredibly important, because a lot of people take the story of sustainability incredibly seriously. People want to know where things are coming from. When they're a guest at a hotel, they want the background, they want the moments, they want to feel that they're part of an agenda, a sustainable agenda, which is assisted and aided by technology. So I hope that's been a few points for you today. I'd really like to thank everybody for attending in these strange times. I think COVID is slowly lifting, and we really wish to see you live next year for the next conference. But it's been an absolute pleasure to share some insights with you. And don't forget to drop us an email or get in touch with us on any of the content that we've presented today. Thanks once again.